Imagine living a lie so polished, so carefully curated, that even you begin to mistake it for the truth. In this story, nothing looks wrong at first glance. There are no warning sirens, no broken windows, no signs of violence. Just a quiet home in a peaceful neighborhood, a mother who devoted her life to her children, and a son who appears confident, successful, and admired, especially online. But when the cameras are turned off, when the filters slip, and when the applause of social media fades into silence, a very different reality emerges. Behind the luxury posts and smiling faces are unpaid debts, growing pressure, and a fear so heavy it can't be spoken out loud. And when shame replaces honesty, an image becomes more important than truth, something dangerous begins to take shape. This is not a story about rage or sudden madness. It's about planning, about patience, about how desperation slowly rewires morality. It's about the moment love turns into leverage, family becomes a financial solution, and trust is exploited instead of protected. What happened next shocked everyone, not because it was loud or brutal, but because it was quiet, calculated, and hidden in plain sight. This is the true story of how a perfect image concealed a devastating betrayal, and how one family learned too late that the most terrifying crimes don't look like crimes at all.
You don't usually hear murder announce itself with screams or chaos. Sometimes it whispers through perfectly filtered photos, smiling faces, and captions about gratitude. Sometimes it wears the costume of success so convincingly that even the people living inside the lie begin to believe it. And that is where this story begins. Not in a bathroom in Perth, not with a body on the floor, but in the quiet seduction of an image that promised more than reality could ever deliver. We live in a time where worth is performed, not felt, where validation is counted in likes, not in sleep at night. When identity becomes a brand, failure doesn't feel like disappointment, it feels like annihilation. Inside that pressure cooker, something dangerous starts to grow. Colleen Rebello believed in stability, in effort, in the long arc of building a life. Her son, Andre, lived in a different emotional economy, one where visibility replaced value and appearance replaced substance. These two worlds didn't just disagree, they collided. And when they did, the fracture was not loud, it was silent, polite, and deeply corrosive. Families rarely implode from one dramatic argument. They erode through unresolved tension, unspoken resentment, and the slow accumulation of disappointments that are never metabolized. Andre wasn't just chasing money, he was chasing recognition, autonomy, and proof that his choices mattered. But when success doesn't come, when the fantasy collapses, shame rushes in to fill the space. And shame is one of the most dangerous emotions we know. Shame doesn't ask for help, it hides. It doesn't confess, it performs. In many families, especially ones that appear loving and functional, there is no language for failure. There is only silence, avoidance, and the quiet rewriting of reality. Colleen's concern wasn't control, it was fear. Fear that her son was standing on quicksand and calling it a foundation. Andre heard that fear not as care, but as judgment. And when love feels like judgment, people stop listening. They start defending. They start justifying. This is how morality begins to bend, not in moments of cruelty, but in moments of rationalization. When someone tells themselves, "I deserve this," or worse, "I am owed this," the line between right and wrong becomes negotiable. The influencer lifestyle didn't just sell products, it sold a story of ease, of inevitability, of entitlement. If others can have this life, why not me? And if I don't have it yet, what's standing in my way?
The tragedy here is not only that a mother lost her life, but that a son lost his internal compass long before that day. The curated world around him rewarded appearance over integrity, speed over process, outcome over ethics. When financial reality contradicted the image had to be protected at all costs. And that is where love becomes transactional. Not how do I care for you, but what role do you play in my survival? Colleen represented stability, history, and boundaries. She also represented, in Andre's distorted calculus, a solution. This is the chilling transformation when a person stops being a relationship and becomes a resource. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens through emotional distancing, through secrecy, through the belief that one's internal crisis is more important than another person's life. We often ask, how could someone do this? When the better question is, how did they slowly convince themselves it was acceptable? Because crimes like this are not acts of passion, they are acts of permission. Permission granted internally over time, reinforced by silence and denial. The illusion of success didn't just hide debt, it hid despair. And despair, when combined with entitlement, doesn't collapse inward, it lashes outward. This keynote is not about social media as a villain. It is about what happens when identity is outsourced and failure becomes unlivable. When people feel trapped between who they are and who they pretend to be, they will do extraordinary things to close that gap. Sometimes, tragically, those things are irreversible. And now we must sit with the discomfort that this wasn't a monster in the shadows, it was a son at a dinner table, a family inside a narrative of normalcy, a life ending not with rage, but with calculation. That is the most unsettling part, because it forces us to ask not just what went wrong here, but where else this quiet erosion is happening, unnoticed, unspoken, and dangerously rationalized. And once we understand that illusion alone doesn't kill, we must look at the second force that gives it teeth: desperation. Desperation is not just about lack of money, it is about lack of options. When someone believes there is no dignified way out, the mind starts constructing shortcuts. Andre's financial collapse was not public, it was hidden behind curated success. And hidden crises don't invite support, they intensify isolation. Debt carries shame, and shame thrives in secrecy. Instead of asking for help, instead of renegotiating identity, desperation pushes people towards control. Control over narrative, over timing, over outcomes. This is where entitlement slips in quietly. Not loud arrogance, but a subtle belief that the universe has been unfair, that correction is justified. In this mindset, harm is reframed as necessity. Insurance becomes strategy, forgery becomes foresight, lies become protection. The most dangerous sentence in the human psyche is, "I have no other choice." Because once that sentence is accepted, almost anything can be justified. What's striking is not just the crime, but the emotional architecture supporting it. Andre didn't see himself as evil, he saw himself as cornered. And when people feel cornered, they don't think relationally, they think tactically. Love is no longer mutual presence, it becomes a ledger. Who owes whom? Who gave up what? Who deserves compensation? This is how financial desperation corrodes love. It replaces gratitude with grievance. It replaces responsibility with blame. Colleen's values, education, stability, patience, stood in direct opposition to Andre's urgency. And urgency, when unmet, becomes resentment. Resentment says, "You don't understand me." Entitlement adds, "And therefore, I don't owe you." The tragedy deepens when we see that Gracie was largely unaware. This tells us something crucial. Desperation isolates. It convinces people that secrecy is safer than vulnerability, that control is safer than truth. In families, secrecy doesn't just hide facts, it erodes trust retroactively. Every past interaction becomes suspect. Every memory becomes unstable.
This is why the aftermath of such crimes is so devastating. Not only is a life lost, but reality itself feels violated. Financial desperation doesn't announce itself as greed, it masquerades as survival. But survival at the expense of another is not survival, it is domination. And the moment someone crosses that moral threshold, they are no longer solving a problem, they are becoming one. This keynote asks us to look honestly at how we talk about success, failure, and worth, because when people believe their value is conditional, they will protect that condition at all costs. The real warning here is not about influencers or insurance policies. It is about emotional illiteracy, about not having language for collapse, about living in cultures and families where asking for help feels like defeat. If we want to prevent tragedies like this, we must create spaces where failure is survivable, where identity is not singular, and love is not contingent on performance. Otherwise, desperation will keep finding its excuses, and entitlement will keep dressing them up as destiny. And when we move forward from desperation and entitlement, we arrive at the final unsettling layer of this story, the realization that modern crime no longer leaves muddy footprints alone. It leaves data, it leaves patterns, it leaves absences. We are living in an age where truth doesn't just bleed, it glitches, where guilt isn't only found in bruises or broken skin, but in deleted messages, altered timelines, and digital silence where there should be noise. This case reminds us that reality now has two bodies, the physical one we can touch and the digital one we curate. And when those two bodies don't align, something is wrong. Andre didn't just manipulate circumstances, he manipulated records, narratives, and perception. He attempted to overwrite reality the same way we overwrite posts: edit, delete, replace. But here's the thing about truth. It doesn't disappear when you erase it. It reorganizes itself elsewhere. Digital footprints don't scream, they whisper. They accumulate quietly, waiting for someone patient enough to listen. The absence of a call, the timing of a login, the rerouting of mail, these are not dramatic acts, but they are intimate ones. They tell us who someone thought they were accountable to. And in this case, Andre believed he could be accountable only to himself. What's chilling is how ordinary this kind of manipulation has become. We edit our lives daily. We crop discomfort out of photos. We mute conversations we don't want to face.
If you're still here watching, thank you. Before you go, please subscribe to our channel, Dark Frame Stories, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another real-life mystery like this.